Hello, world and universe. Welcome to the Trevor Donald Experience. Manifest your truth. And if you're new to the channel, please hit that like and subscribe button. And for all my continued followers, I want to say thank you. And this is an opinion-based video channel where I try to open your eyes and ears up to some of the travails and tribulations that take place throughout our cities, our states, our country, and sometimes around the world. And with my video channel, I'm coming to you straight from the Midwest, St. Louis, Missouri, and sometimes Chicago. And this is another case of a Missouri man who has been exonerated and or his conviction overturned after spending 30 years in prison for an alleged murder that he evidently did not commit based on the evidence. And this has everything to do with what we talk about today with surveillance, DNA analysis, which both of those were not in full effect 30 years ago. So this gentleman got convicted based on an eyewitness testimony of two young teenagers. Two young teenage boys gave eyewitness testimony on this man, Christopher Dunn, and he ended up getting life in prison. And spent 30 years, and now all of this evidence, even the two teens have gone back on their witness statement and said they made it up, and it took quite a number of years to get this Christopher Dunn, this man, Christopher Dunn, 52 years old, released from prison. It's been all over the news the last few weeks, and this is the second person here recently that just got out. Remember, there was a Sandra Hemi white female who did 43 years in prison in a Western Missouri prison. 43 years, white female, who recently has been released from a Missouri prison. So this does not necessarily have to do with racism and color. There have been plenty of innocent people, male, female, white men, black women, white women, that have been wrongly convicted in our United States penal system for years. And thankfully, for DNA and video surveillance, that technology, I think, was supposed to make sure that we got the appropriate convictions for people and sent more people to prison. But what you find out is DNA analysis and surveillance technology has actually released, especially DNA analysis in today's time, has actually released innumerable amounts of individuals who were wrongly convicted and absolutely spent a number of years in prison when they were innocent victims or innocent people. So here we go. Missouri judge overturns a murder conviction of St. Louis man Christopher Dunn, 52 years old, who was imprisoned for over 30 years. Well, let's see what the story has to say. A Missouri judge on Monday overturned the conviction of Christopher Dunn, who has spent more than 30 years in prison for a killing he has long contended he didn't commit. The ruling is likely to free Dunn from prison, but it wasn't immediately clear when that would happen. He has been serving a sentence of life without parole for 30 years. And as a news alert, just last week, he was exonerated and now he's free. He is out of jail. The St. Louis Circuit Judge Jason Singhauser's ruling came several weeks after he presided over a 3-day hearing in Dunn's fate. Dunn, now 52, was convicted of first-degree murder in the 1990 shooting of 15-year-old Rico Rogers. St. Louis Circuit Attorney Gabe Gore filed a motion in February seeking a vacate to the guilty verdict. A hearing was just recently in May. Singhauser, in his ruling, wrote that the circuit attorney has made a clear and convincing showing of actual innocence that undermines the basis for Dunn's convictions because, in light of new evidence, no juror acting reasonably would have voted to find Dunn guilty of these crimes beyond a reasonable doubt. Dunn's attorney, Midwest Innocence Project Executive Director Tricia Rojo Bushnell, said she was overjoyed by the judge's ruling. Now, Chris looks forward to spending time with his wife and family as a free man, Attorney Bushnell said in a statement. However, the Missouri Attorney General's office opposed the effort to vacate Dunn's conviction. Lawyers for the state said in the May hearing that the initial testimony from the two boys, not two men, at the scene who identified Dunn as the shooter was correct, even though they later recanted their testimony as adults. So they gave eyewitness testimony when they were young teenagers, and then when they became adults, they recanted their statement. There's some gray areas in there. How do you take a man's life with this backwards and forward hearsay statements? That verdict was accurate, and that verdict should stand, Assistant Attorney General Tristan Epstedt said at the hearing. So the Attorney General office wanted Christopher Dunn to stay in prison based on that two young boys' eyewitness testimony. Spokesperson Madeline Searing said the Attorney General's office will appeal. The decision in Dunn's case came days after Sandra Hemme was freed from a Western Missouri prison after serving 43 years for a murder that a judge determined she didn't commit. Bailey's office also opposed Hemme's release. So this was a white woman from up near St. Joseph's, Missouri, who got convicted of a murder that it doesn't look like she committed, and she spent 43 years in prison. So the Attorney General's office, I don't think his rejection to having these hearings for these individuals that have been convicted of crimes that it doesn't look like they committed, he's not basing it based on race or sex, because this is a white female, Sandra Hemme, and of course Christopher Dunn is a black male. I think it's just based on poverty. Whether you're poor and black or poor and white, it is all looked as the same to the elites and the upper echelon of society. So a poor white person doesn't matter just as much as a poor black person. A Missouri law adopted in 2021 lets prosecutors request hearings when they see evidence of a wrongful conviction. While Bailey's office is not required to oppose such efforts, he also opposed another effort in St. Louis that resulted in Lamar Johnson being freed last year after serving 28 years for a murder in which the judge ruled he was wrongly convicted. So that's the third person in less than 2 years here in the state of Missouri that have gotten wrongfully convicted and subsequently have been released. Thank God. And we have to give all of the credit to the Midwest Innocence Project for sure. So this is what happened with Dunn's case. Rico Rogers was shot May 18, 1990, when a gunman opened fire while he was with a group of other teenage boys outside a home. DeMar Stepp was 14 and Michael Davis Jr. was 12 at the time. Both initially identified Dunn as the shooter, a 14-year-old and a 12-year-old. In a recorded interview played at the hearing, Davis said he lied because he thought Dunn was affiliated with a rival gang. He admitted this. Davis, the 12-year-old. Stepp's story has changed a few times over the years. This is DeMaurice Stepp, the 14-year-old. Gore said at the hearing, most recently he said he did not see Dunn as the shooter. That's what the 14-year-old at the time, DeMaurice Stepp, said he didn't see the shooter. Gore said another judge previously found Stepp to be a completely unreliable witness and urged Judge Singhauser to discount him altogether. So, Dunn has said he was at his mother's home at the time of the shooting. Childhood friend Nicole Bailey testified that she spoke with him by phone that night, and he was on the phone with her at his mother's house. Attorney Epstedt, the Assistant Attorney General, said that alibi could not be trusted, and Dunn's story had shifted multiple times over the years. Dunn did not testify at the hearing. The 2021 law has resulted in the release of two men who each spent decades in prison. In addition to Johnson, Kevin Strickland was freed in 2021 after more than 40 years for 3 killings in Kansas City after a judge ruled he was wrongly convicted in 1979. That's 4 people that have spent over 30 years each. We're talking over 120 to 160 years incarcerated for crimes they did not commit. Another hearing is next month for Marcellus Williams, who narrowly escaped lethal injection and is now facing another execution date. The St. Louis County prosecuting attorney Wesley Bell filed a motion in January to vacate the conviction of Williams, who was convicted in the fatal stabbing of Lisa Gale in 1998. Bell's motion said 3 experts determined that Williams' DNA was not on the handle of the butcher knife used in the killing. Williams was hours away from execution in 2017 when then Governor Eric Greitens halted it and appointed a board of inquiry to examine his innocence claim. The board never issued a ruling, and now Governor Mike Parson, like Greitens, a Republican, dissolved it last year. The Missouri Supreme Court ruled this month that Parson had the authority to dissolve the board and set a new execution date of September 24th. So this is a potential 5th guy who is now looking at death if his case is not exonerated and if he is actually innocent and not guilty. So Missouri could potentially be putting an innocent man to death in September. So the legal authorities need to expedite taking a look at Marcellus Williams' case, or the blood of Mr. Williams will be on the hands of the state of Missouri if they actually execute an innocent man. What does this show you? It shows you that, man, and I'm in my mid-50s, I'm around the same age as these gentlemen, as Mr. Dunn. If everything was based back in the 70s and 80s on just witness testimony, eyewitness testimony, man, those are all kinds of mistakes that can be made each and every day. That's called human error. That's why you see in today's time in the NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball, they have cameras. They have timeouts when they can go back and look at the camera to see if it was actually a strike or a ball, if it was actually a foul, if the person was inbounds or out of bounds. There's a certain level of error that deals with the human eye, let alone something that is traumatic, and making sure that you're getting caught off guard. You see a murder. How are you? All this stimuli is taking place: your ears, your eyes, your smell, and you're supposed to accurately be able to see the person that's doing the shooting, the person that's getting shot, and you're gonna know in a split second exactly who they are. Come on, it's a flip of a coin. So it is. I am thankful that technology has its advantages. We have surveillance all over the place and DNA analysis. I am thankful for that because I think it's actually freed more people than incarcerated more people. And for those who are worried about the big eye in the sky, if you ain't doing nothing wrong, then don't worry about it. Tell my children all the time, going to the library can't get you in any trouble versus going to a nightclub. You can learn more at a library than you can at a nightclub. I know it's boring, but spend more time at a library and in school than out in the streets. I'm thankful that Mr. Dunn's conviction got overturned. He has been released after 30 years. There's probably going to be a civil lawsuit for compensatory damages based on the number of years that he's been there. We'll have to see how that goes. Missouri has a law where you cannot sue for your false incarceration unless you were on death row. And there is a ceiling on how much you can get per day for being incarcerated. But I don't think Ms. Sandra Hemme, or Mr. Dunn really cares about that. You can't put a price tag on your freedom. And if they have been wrongly convicted, let's praise God that the floodgates open literally from the prison to freedom, and they have an opportunity to smell fresh air, hug their loved ones, and try to pick up right where they left off. They've lost 30 or 40 years, half of their life. You talk about PTSD, you talk about mental health issues, physical health issues, being incarcerated that long. There's going to be all kinds of therapy and rehabilitation that needs to take place. And hopefully Ms. Hemme and Mr. Dunn can get entangled in a web of love, life, love, and liberty with their extended family, friends, husband, wives, etc. Tell me what you think about this conviction being overturned. It's been all over the news about Christopher Dunn, 52 years old, who has been recently released, and also Sandra Hemme, who spent 43 years in a Western Missouri prison. I did a video on her a few weeks ago, so please go back and take a look at it. This has been a Trevor Donald Experience. Manifest your truth in a positive, righteous, and God-fearing way.